Hi and welcome to Knit with Hannah. I'm Hannah, I'm here with Knitting Natter to help you knit with ease, confidence and joy. Did you notice that I didn't say the whole thing last week? Maybe you did. Too excited to get started, I think. So yes, we talked about knitting benefits last week, which was all about patience, and there are so many hidden benefits in knitting. I just love splitting them up and realising how much we can get from knitting. And this week something has been on my mind for a while, and it's something that I've been talking to friends about because I have friends who are designers and jewellers and painters, embroidery artists, all sorts, and we have all noticed the same things. And the word is healing. And the very simple thing that so many people come to knitting when they're looking for a real grounding, a sense of healing, a sense of safeness, security, of feeling that everything's okay. And knitting is something you pick up in those times if you're already a knitter, but it's also the kind of thing you pick up, and we noticed this 3+ years ago. There was this sudden lift in everyone wanting to start knitting when the pandemic started, when the lockdown started, and suddenly it didn't feel quite safe. And knitting gave us that feeling that everything was okay. Everything was going to be fine. We were going to get through this. And that sense of healing, whether you're actually ill in a physical way or emotional, mental, spirit way as well, you can just sometimes feel that something isn't right. And if you know anything about Ayurvedic medicine, you'll be aware that the body is seen in different layers, and that these different layers all work interconnectedly. And so if we heal the physical body, but we don't heal the other layers, the body, the mind, the energy, the spirit, the emotional body, then all of those things can still be a bit odd and a bit unconnected. And so the physical body doesn't quite heal quite enough. And so this is one thing that I've always gone back to myself, is when I know that everything feels a bit off, I go back to the physical because that's the grounding. And part of that physical can be, what am I actually doing in real time? Because then we start to notice how healing it is, because it connects to everything else too. So let's talk about this today. And I know that there are quite a few ways I just like to connect with it rather than just rambling. So let's just talk about it in different kind of parts of the video. We have talked about knitting, how it is an antidote to low self-esteem, how last week we talked about patience. We've talked about how kind and mindful slow knitting can be, and an emotional way. And both of those things, or all of those things, reduce stress and tension in the body, which ultimately supports healing and health maintenance in the body. And actually, there's one thing that I do want to mention. I watched a YouTube video recently. I do want to drop it in the comments if I can, in the description if I can find it. There's brilliant YouTube film producers out there. They've become so honed at their craft that they are film producers, and it's like watching a mini documentary. So this was a half an hour about reading. I've always loved reading, and it's been something that I've been picking up again in a completely different way. I'm not going to go all into that. That's a whole other story. But there was one person who we connected to and talked to on that documentary. Just in a very short snippet of it, what was said was that reading is like enforced meditation. you just give yourself that chance to sit in a state where, if you need to, if you want to, you can lose track of time. You can forget the cares and worries of the day. You can sit there and feel that actually life's okay, because everything that's around you is pretty much gone. You are connected with and sustained within what you're reading. That reading experience is all that you are at that time. And your mind can wander as well, and suddenly connections will appear. You'll be reading one thing about a character or about a place, whatever kind of genre of book you're reading, and then it will suddenly click in your mind that it's really connecting you to something else that you've been doing or some question you've been asking. And this feels like meditation. If you've meditated to a point where you've felt those connections start to buzz and the mind just starts to find peace, then reading can find you that, and so can knitting. And that was exactly what I pointed and found in that documentary that just gave me, yes, knitting is that too. It feels like an enforced meditation, but it's so joyful. It is a perfect time for pondering, for the lack of thought, for staying in the moment, and it reduces stress and tension, and it helps us find that healing. It helps us find the interconnectedness in all the layers of our body. And you will notice I'm not saying, well, knitting is great for this particular ailment because of this and those particular points, because I don't want to give anyone labels or promises or anything like that. In so many ways, it's the way that you do it, it's the awareness you have when you're doing things as well. And when it comes to knitting, there can be burnout and there can be demotivation too. So both of those things can mean that knitting doesn't quite feel right yet. And we need to find the balance when we're knitting, where it doesn't feel too much and it doesn't feel too little. So, yeah, knitting can be great for particular things, but if you do it in a particular way, it's not great for it. So, me standing here and giving you promises about a particular illness, if you do this, then blah, blah, blah will happen, and blah, blah, blah. I don't feel that it's my place, because I'm not sitting there helping you and supporting you in your very particular place and particular circumstances to find that and what you need with knitting for those things. So, yeah, you will notice I'm not talking about specific things. But what we are saying is that by coming into that meditation, and this is just one aspect of it, coming into the meditative state, before you know it, the reduced stress and tension helps everything. Okay, so one other thing that I realised, it's a much bigger part of knitting. When we knit, we actually learn over time and prevent burnout by being willing to say yes and no. And those boundaries that we put in place give us a great sense of freedom in our lives to say, if you want me to knit something and I can't knit it yet, then I'm not going to do it. And it gives us freedom in our lives to say, yes, I do want to knit something, but I'm going to knit it for me. All those little things helps us build boundaries. And guess what? It prevents burnout, because we haven't got so much promise and guilt and expectation on our shoulders. Reduces stress and tension, and it helps us use those skills elsewhere in our lives too. I've just talked about this before, but boundaries are a big thing too. We also share knowledge. Now, this is one thing, and it it feels odd when I'm talking about this with health maintenance, but we learn through knitting that it's okay to ask for help, because we look for courses, we look for workshops where we can learn something. Always learning with knitting. I'm still learning new things with knitting. I'm reminding myself of things that I've learnt before. And all of those things over time have helped me say, it's okay to ask for help in other parts of our life too. Guess where that can help? Medically speaking too. And in just asking for less pressure to be piled on us in other parts of our lives. It feels like such a small thing, but it can really help our health and our mindset and our mindfulness day to day to say, it's okay to ask for help. And yes, that's healthy. And that's maintaining good health, or it's helping us heal if we're trying to find better health. Also, with knitting, and I have mentioned this already, with burnout, you find when you're knitting sometimes, and I know, I went through this phase in my knitting journey, and I'm not surprised because I had to go there to get out of it and realise that a different way of knitting was okay, and that's what brought me to this point in my life as well. I said, wow, I'm going to make a completely new wardrobe of my clothes for all these knitted items. It's going to be amazing. And I was knitting non-stop, one jumper after another, and I was knitting them in 3 weeks. And it was, honestly, it was crazy. All the time, I was also starting to design my own things too. So I was designing things to sell, and I was knitting them up to sell. And it was way too much. I was asking too much of myself, and I was knitting too many hours in a day, thinking that possibly that was all I was worth. There was nothing else worthy in my life, and this was the only opportunity I was going to have to prove that I was worthy by knitting. So that burnout helped me realise that it was okay to take breaks. It was okay to do less. And this helps us realise that, first of all, we get a much better awareness of what we need physically and mindfully. I feel a lot more able to say, my wrist isn't quite right today because I've been doing something else, or because I was knitting for longer yesterday, so I'll only knit for a short time today. 20 minutes is okay. I may have done more yesterday or more 3 days ago, but that's fine because the balance evens out, and that's okay. So I really enjoy the fact that I can do less or more and find a good balance, and have that awareness for where my body is and what it says yes to and what it says no to. And then before I know it, I'm doing that in other parts of my life too. I'm saying, cool, that was too much, I need to take a rest. And that was just enough, I can do a bit more. All of those things happen physically. They also happen mindfully. I will look at knitting and I'll go, you know what? I know if I knit this, because I've done this before, and I continue knitting, I'm very likely to make a mistake or actually get too tired because I'm doing it. I'm able to say no, put it away now, and it will be so much easier to knit tomorrow, and I can enjoy those 2 sessions rather than that elongated too much session and then a really headachy, frustrated session the next day. So really appreciating and having awareness for where I am in my knitting not only helps me there, but it prevents, guess what, tension and stress the next day, and really helps that healthy vibe and helps that mental, emotional, energy and spirit, mind as well, body too. So yes, all different layers of the body finding more healthy for us to do different things. And there is a big hidden wow about all of this as well. And I forgot to mention it at the beginning, so I'm going to mention it now. This is something, it's a really amazing side effect. It is that if we're doing all of this, then we're helping other people realise that that's okay too. And that's a really great way to live your life too. So we're helping people realise that they can do things quietly, with focus and with attention, and they can meditate over whatever their activity may be. It is this quietness, it's this stillness. And we all love to lose track of time sometimes and to just think and ponder and be on our own time and our own space. So knitting and showing other people that you appreciate that for yourself helps them find it and appreciate that for themselves too. So yeah, and then giving boundaries for our knitting helps other people realise that it's okay to say no and yes sometimes as well. We are sharing knowledge and asking for knowledge as well. So if people ask us for help with their knitting, then we know it's okay to say yes or find them someone who can help them. And it's okay for them to ask help from other people too, because we're doing that as well. And I love the last one, especially because taking breaks and preventing burnout, so much of that is led by example. And we can lead by example from what we see in our own lives, but we can help and learn from other people's experiences too. Okay, this is something that's been really kind of on my mind, and it's been a difficult one to actually talk about on a video because I've just been wondering how to say it. And I hope it's come clear to just share with you how much you are already doing and how much you very likely already know knitting is already giving you, but there are other things here that I've talked about today that possibly you weren't even thinking about, that you realised I'm spot on, I'm doing a good job already as well. Do drop in the comments if you have anything to think about that as well. Now I do want to ask you one other thing. We are being very healthy, we're putting boundaries in place, we're sharing knowledge and we're asking for knowledge, and we're taking breaks. And we're enforcing meditation as well with our knitting, with that knit along. And this is a longer one. We're going from October right until the 2nd of October to the 17th of December. I've organised this timeline. That's it in my head now. We are taking a couple of weeks off twice, and that gives us small breaks so we can knit other things. We won't get demotivated and kind of find ourselves being bored. And also, I know sometimes with a knit along that the 3 weeks isn't quite enough, and it certainly won't be enough for this project because we're knitting with more yarn and a much larger project. 3 weeks, something just happens. Even if you join the knit along, something just happens and you can't be there as much as you wanted to be. And then I do have emails and photos and things from people telling me afterwards that they've knitted the main item that we were knitting in the knit along like 2 or 3 weeks later, because like I say, life happens and the knit along ended up not being the right time for them. So I'm hoping even if you can't make 1 or 2 of the weeks, then you can make the other weeks instead. And this, like I say, is a larger item. You're going to love it. I will let you know more about that next week, and if you want in before anyone else, and especially if you're in the UK and you want the kits, get on the email list because I will share it with you before anyone else out there in the ether. Get on the email list. I will leave the link in the description. That's why I'm pointing down. The description is down here. Do go and watch that. Do go and read that. Click on the link and you can go and find the email waiting list. And what I will very likely do next week and if you're watching this into September, is I will leave the link for joining the knit along down here as well. So yes, we have been talking about more knitting benefits this week. I hope you found this intriguing and interesting and inspiring. That was the intention. And like I said, I've been wanting to talk about how healing knitting is for a long time, and I kind of struggled to know exactly how to do it. And I hope this has made sense. I am so excited to see you next week for more information about the knit along, and I will be revealing exactly what we are knitting. I will see you for that. Bye for now. Happy knitting.